ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the September 11th Technical Coordinating Committee meeting. I will be your chair today. With that said, before we get started, is there any public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none. Let's do introductions and roll call. Who among you wants to take care of that for us? Asha. Thank you, Asha.
City of Asheville, Lucy Crown.
Here, good morning.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Good morning.
Buncombe County, William High.
Hello again.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Here.
TPD, Daniel Sellers.
Here.
Flat Rock, Pat Christie.
Here.
Apple Country, Public Transit, Jana Bianculli.
Here.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Here.
Mars Hill, Nathan Bennett. RPO, Vicki Eastland.
Here.
NCDOT Division 13, Doug Phillips.
Here.
NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Good morning, everybody.
Anybody that I missed?
Okay. Let's go around and do everybody else. Let's start in this room.
Oh, yes, thanks. Start. Tim Anderson, Division 13. Chris Deaton, Deputy Division Engineer for Division 13. Chairman Cabinet, Engineer.
Oh, sorry. French River MPO.
Vicki Eastland, Lance Galaxio. Hannah Bagley, French River MPO.
AC O'Connor, French River MPO.
Asha Rado, Land Sky Regional Council.
Katie Broadwell, Transportation Demand Manager for Land Sky Regional Council.
Joel Strickland with McAdams.
John Hunter, MPDOC, TPD.
Olin Dalhousen, Pond and Company.
All right. To introduce people on the phone. Great. Let's move on. Okay. With that said, we have an agenda, a consent agenda before us. If anyone would like to make a motion to approve those, please do so. Or unless barring discussion, that is.
Vicki, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Vicki. Is there any discussion or second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Steve. Asha, could you please help us?
City of Asheville, Lucy Crown.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William High.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approved.
TPD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Flat Rock, Pat Christie.
Approve.
Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Bianculli.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Approved.
Mars Hill, Nathan Bennett.
Approve.
RPO, Vicki Eastland.
Aye.
Waynesville, Elizabeth Teague.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 13, Doug Phillips.
Approved.
NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Approved.
Yeah, I got it.
Hooray. With that, we will take it on to our first business item, adoption of Elevate 2050. Kristen, do you want to chat or shall we hand off?
Sure. I'll provide a quick overview. So the Elevate 2050 plan is the federally required 25-year transportation plan or metropolitan transportation plan for our MPO. There has been a lot of work done on this over the past roughly 18 months, not including some of the other related studies, including the socioeconomic projections that played a big role in terms of the development of the travel demand model that helped inform the MCP. And with us is the project manager, Joel Strickland from McAdams. So Joel, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Tristan. Thanks for letting me be here today. We're really excited to be back and to be close to wrapping this project up for you all. As Tristan mentioned, this is one of probably the largest federally mandated plans for the MPO. So it's obviously of utmost importance, and we're really excited to be finishing this up and presenting to you today. So I will I've got a quick PowerPoint to share with you here, and I will get it up on the screen. Record to someone.
Tristan, you might need to stop sharing.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Try it again.
All yours. Roll.
All right, thank you. All right, good deal. There we go. So a few things we just wanted to run through with you today, now that we're wrapping up this plan, our kind of agenda for this presentation. Just to talk briefly about the importance of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, lay out some of the key elements of this plan for you, reiterate some of the changes that we made to the draft plan that you all saw a month or two ago. And we went over that at the last meeting, but I just want to reiterate that with you again. Talk a little bit about the Comprehensive Transportation Plan portion of, or that accompanies the MCP. And then we'll hopefully take action on moving forward with the MCP today. So briefly here, and this will be, and let me mention too, VHB was our partner on this. They're also on the call. Luba Zueva is on the call with us, and Julie Murphy from VHB. So we're glad to have them on the call also. But going back to the importance of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, obviously it's a requirement for all MPOs. It's the main document that MPOs work out of, the main long-range transportation plan document. It really sets out the vision for the region, looks at policies, looks at operational strategies and the projects really to achieve that vision for any MPO region. It also provides a blueprint for identifying future transportation needs and how the region will target transportation investment. It covers at least the next 20 years. As Tristan mentioned, this one's covering basically a 25-year time frame, but it has to cover at a minimum 20 years. It identifies how to operate a multimodal network, which obviously is of the utmost importance. We want these plans to truly be multimodal and look at all the different transportation modes in the region. Reflects public involvement, which is obviously a huge part of this. We went through the public involvement stages at various points of the project, and getting the public's feedback on the plan and on the development of the plan is extremely important to the MPO. It contains a financial plan and is fiscally constrained. So obviously we've gone through the process of projecting out the financials over the next 25 years and including a fiscally constrained plan for projects moving forward in that 25-year time frame. And then obviously it's required to be updated every 4 to 5 years. So we're back this time with the new 5-year update. A little bit about how an MTP fits into the grand scheme of the whole journey of a transportation project. Kind of from a top-down approach, we start looking at something like the NC Moves 2050 plan, which is really a statewide plan which more or less develops a vision for the state, identifies some important corridors for the state, but really looks at the state as a whole and at a high level. From there, you kind of start moving down to the CTP and the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. That's another very important document. They're usually 30 plus years out. But the key difference between the CTPs and the MTPs, with CTPs you can put basically any project in there that you want. They don't have to be fiscally constrained, so you can almost develop what we used to call kind of a wish list and include that into the CTP. With the MTP, as I mentioned just a moment ago, most MTPs are for a 25 to 30 year time frame. It's based on the NCDOT revenue forecast and forecast for the specific MPOs. And again, it has to be fiscally constrained, which is the real difference between the MTP and the CTP. You have to show that fiscal constraint with the MTP. Hopefully this MTP will be a tool for you all moving forward with prioritization. You can pick projects obviously from your MTP and slide them through the P8, P9 process. to hopefully get projects funded and get projects into the STIP or your TIP. And of course, again, we're shrinking down from high to low. Once a project gets into CIP, then, you know, it's got some funding attached at the state level, which will hopefully move it forward to construction shortly thereafter. So that just gives you a little idea of kind of the journey of a transportation project and really how the MTP plays into the larger perspective of the planning process and the project process. So looking at some of the key elements in Elevate 2050, obviously a big part of this are the federally required planning factors. We have kind of at the intro of the document, I believe starting on page 6, we talk about each of the planning factors, kind of explain their relevance, and then the planning factors are integrated throughout the document to show how they are being used in the MTP and being used and addressed by the MPO. The vision, goals, and objectives are laid out in the plan on page 20. Page 24 kind of starts looking at some of the regional trends in the area when you're thinking of land use trends and population trends and those types of things and it feeds right into really the existing conditions, which are kind of shown on page 44 of the document. The existing conditions obviously are looking at more of a current time frame in the region and addressing what some of the needs may be based on what we're seeing currently within the region. From there, the plan kind of gets into the public involvement process on page 96. And again, we did a very robust public involvement process. I think we did a series of 4 public meetings along with several surveys along the way. So we do lay out the public involvement process that went into this plan, as well as documenting the involvement in the plan processes. From there, we really get into the modal and policy program recommendations, and they're kind of laid out beginning on page 100. From there, we get into the financial plan, and again, with the financial plan, we're looking at future year revenues to see what can be expected within the region and within the MPO as far as funding for projects moving forward. And then we actually go through the process of constraining the project based on that financial plan, and that's really laid out beginning on page 126 of the document. And then lastly, we get into kind of the beyond 2050 and beyond the MTP and start looking more along the CTP side of things. And that kind of starts on page 176 of the document, but we start looking beyond 2050, start looking into the appendices of the actual document, which includes that unfunded project list and includes a lot of the data and really fine details that went into the process of developing this plan. So a lot of that is laid out in the appendices of the document. And again, the CTP portion is also laid out more detailed. So a little bit about how STI and Elevate 2050 relate and interrelate. Obviously, you're going through the prioritization process now. You'll have to do it again in 2 years. It's kind of the never-ending process. But just wanted to show a little bit about how these two things tie together and the importance of both. So most of your projects that are in STI, most of your projects that you're moving forward in P8 this time are coming from your MTP, whether it be this MTP with 2050 or your 2045 MTP. But there are a few things to keep in mind that kind of make these different. You know, sometimes you will get projects that move forward or that go into prioritization that may not have come from the MTP, and there are reasons for that. Obviously, with the prioritization process, the divisions can submit projects too, so they're not necessarily tied to submitting projects from the MTP, whereas the MPO may be more inclined to submit projects from the MTP. Also, you know, we did with Elevate 2050, we did develop a prioritization process on how to score projects and rank projects with that. And it is similar to what is used locally for prioritization and for STI, but they're not exactly the same. So when projects went through the prioritization process with the MTP, it's a little bit different than going through the local process for prioritization. And then the last point there, if a project does end up in the STIP that is not currently in the MTP, you can always go back and do an MTP amendment to make sure that that project does get included in the MTP. Again, I hate harping on this, but it's just a fact, and most of you in the room know this, but obviously funding is expected to continue to be a challenge moving forward. We did kind of reflect that in the MTP and in the financial portion of the plan. And then lastly, kind of the odds of new projects from STI being added before a new MTP is completed isn't great. Slim may not be the best word, but just based on where revenue forecasts are right now, there's not a great hope that a lot of the projects that are in this MTP will necessarily move forward in STI. So just a few things to keep in mind, just based on what you're going through now with prioritization and also what we're going through with approving this MTP.
But stay on the call for our prioritization item.
Yeah, that's right. Don't disregard it. It's still extremely important. The 2050 financial plan, which is a part of this document, and we've talked with you about this before, but just wanted to reiterate it. Obviously, we had to make some assumptions there, and we worked with NCDOT and the TIP unit on really developing this financial plan and making sure we understood where their mind was moving forward and making sure that we were taking the right path forward as well. But some of the assumptions, the financial plan assumes that the current distribution of transportation funds will continue, and that is kind of in line with the prioritization, the spot prioritization assumptions as well. We did not assume that there would be any major changes in legislation that would have a drastic effect on funding. We did not assume that there would be any new funding sources beyond those that currently exist. One of the assumptions we did make was that there would be no increases in funding programs unless it can be reasonably assumed based on current legislation, bills, and local planning. And then one thing to note here, and we've talked to you about this before, but just want to reiterate it. We did assume a 5% inflation factor compounded over the first 5 years of the midterm and then held constant for the rest of the midterm and all of the long-term projections. And part of the reason for doing that was to be more in line with how NCDOT does the TIP. We wanted to make sure that we were kind of matching up the same method moving forward for inflation. And when we developed the financial plan, which I'll show you in a second, we actually backed out inflation, and that way we could keep cost estimates based on the 2025 year versus trying to project cost estimates moving forward. Again, that's very similar to how NCDOT does it, and that was one of the main reasons for us doing it that way. So looking here, and you've seen this before, but this was the fiscal constraint for programming projects. And again, this is in 2025 dollars. You can see how we've broken it out over basically 3 horizons, from fiscal year 26 to 35, fiscal year 36 to 45, and then fiscal years 46 to 50. Obviously, fiscal years 26 to 35, something to remember on that is that that's basically based just on what's currently in the TIP, and you'll see that also in the projects that are moving forward during that time frame. For programming projects, we really started programming new projects beginning in fiscal year 36 and beyond. There was some additional discretionary funding that we were able to program for fiscal years 29 to 35. But you can see our projections here. And again, just keep in mind that, it looks like we're projecting less funding moving forward. That's not necessarily the case. We're just backing out inflation dollars so we can keep those costs the same moving forward.
I think something just to point out here is this breakout is really a best case scenario for bike ped over the next 25 years. There's not really a way to project things a whole lot better than we have them projected here. So that is one thing to note. The 10% going to bike ped from some of the STI sources, that is about 3 times better than where we are at currently.
Thanks, Tristan. That's a really good point. And I mentioned this just a second ago, but again, just to note, the 26 to 35 projects are just the STIP projects that are currently programmed. We did not, excuse me, we did not program any new projects for that near-term horizon. Looking back a little bit at your last MTP and this one, we wanted just to give you a little bit of information about the revenues for those two MTPs. Really, when you look back at the 2045 MTP that was done 5 years ago and this one, the financial projections are relatively close and relatively similar when you include the impact that inflation is having on revenue. So the revenue looks about the same moving forward. Really, the biggest difference and the reason why we weren't able to program as many projects this time around as you were in 2045 really had to do with cost increases in projects. One of the first things we did when we started this plan was, we started accumulating projects from different planning efforts, including your previous MTP, including the previous CTP, and even including the last round of prioritization. And, a lot of that included cost estimates. But what we found, obviously, and DOT folks know this, but what we found was that cost estimates from the last MTP, which was 5 years ago, were pretty far off base. And even cost estimates from the last round of prioritization also needed to be updated. So although the revenues look very similar to the last MTP, the fact that costs for projects have gone up so much, we weren't able to program as many projects this time around as you did in 2045. Just kind of a summary overview of projects within the MTP, and this does not include the projects that are in the TIP. So this is really looking beyond that. Roadway projects, there's 24 projects programmed. Bike and ped projects, there's 36 projects programmed, and there's 1 rail project programmed, and that's the rail crossing on Riverside Drive. And then getting into the changes that we made based on the last time we saw a draft version of the MTP and based on the ending of the public comment period. I think we've mentioned these to you at the last meeting last month, but just wanted to reiterate those to you a little bit just as a refresher. We did add some additional text, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. We added the Appendix G, which includes the model output summary, and our VHB friends helped us out a lot with that. Appendix H adds all of the public comments that were received and addresses those. So during that public comment period that we had, any public comments that we received are addressed there and are documented there. And then Appendix I is a spot for plan revisions moving forward. So I mentioned that additional text just a moment ago. Again, some of the things that we added, we addressed a little more detail on the high occupancy toll lanes and talked a little bit more about the I-40 study. We met with the MPO yesterday and got the results, or got the PowerPoint for the results of that study. So we may go back and add a little bit more information into that subsection as well, and we're actually working on that now. But just wanted to bring that to your attention. We also added more information about electric vehicle infrastructure. And really what we did there, we added information about what's in place currently within the region, and then looked at that moving forward for anticipated growth in the region to kind of see where some shortfalls may be and where some needs may be. So that's included in the document. We added more information about environmental mitigation activities, called out some of the stuff that the MPO is already doing, and kind of added some suggestions for the future. We also added additional information about transit, talking more about what's currently ongoing in the area and what efforts are being made to to upgrade transit in the area and where money is currently going. So we added some information about that. We revised some of the project descriptions to include greater cross-section details. Reasoning for that obviously has to do with helping the MPO out in the future moving forward as they submit projects for prioritization. The more detail that's there, the better. And also with the model moving forward, the more information that you can plug into the model, the better results you can get from it. So we wanted to make sure there was as much detail with the project cross-sections or the project descriptions as possible. So we revised those to include more details. And then we've included the updated TIP in the report, the major projects from that for years 26 through 35. That was being adopted kind of simultaneously to us getting the draft out. So we've added that in now. And then lastly, we included some of the highest priority Swannanoa sidewalk projects based on some public comments. So just wanted to bring those to your attention again as some of the additions since the last draft went out. Also with the CTP now, again, that is included as Appendix F now. With Elevate 2050, again, we've mentioned this several times, but again, with Elevate 2050, with the MTP, it must be fiscally constrained, which meant there were several projects that, or a lot of projects that could not fit into those constraints. So those projects are still documented, but they're included in the CTP. And again, obviously the reasoning for that is there's more projects than there is funding. So the CTP is there kind of projecting that blueprint for the future for projects that are in the MTP. And then we've got a little bit of information about some of the CTP projects here. And thanks to Daniel and NCDOT for helping us design these maps and giving us some recommendations with that. But we've got highway recommendations for the CTP in this appendices. There's 22 inset maps for CTP highway recommendations. So you see all those little boxes over there to the right. When you look into the actual document, there's a lot of inset maps that go into a lot more detail. But laying out this project, there's 15 congestion and mobility projects, 51 access management operations projects, 130 modernization projects, 3 projects that are listed as other, 4 interchange projects, and 9 intersection projects. For the bike ped recommendations, we've got 21 inset maps here. There's 66 bicycle projects, 72 pedestrian projects, 73 projects that are kind of a joint bike and ped project, and then 88 multi-use path projects. And then for public transportation and rail, we've got 3 inset maps here, and we've got 4 urban fixed bus corridor projects, 1 rural fixed bus corridor project, 2 transit facility projects, and then 6 Amtrak freight route projects included. So again, kind of the wrap up and why we're back today. Obviously the MPO has a deadline to get this MTP adopted by the end of the month. So the time is of the essence. Again, going back to August, we had the draft plan out for public comment. That comment closed on August 15th, and all of the feedback that we received during that draft period has been included in either the appendices of the document, or it's all been included in the appendices, and it's either been addressed there or there's actually been changes to the document made since then. We did take this to the prioritization subcommittee on September 3rd, and they did recommend approval. And let me just give a plug for the prioritization subcommittee too. They were extremely helpful in really guiding this process and helping us make some key decisions moving forward on this MTP. So we greatly appreciate the prioritization subcommittee and their support throughout this process. September 11th, which is today, obviously we're hoping you all will recommend approval of Elevate 2050 and the unfunded projects which make up the CTP. And if so, we will take it to the board next week on the 18th for their approval. And I think that's everything I have at this point. Again, we appreciate everybody's participation in this, everybody's feedback. The MPO staff has been excellent in helping us and providing information throughout this process. Again, the prioritization subcommittee was very key in moving everything forward and providing feedback also. So we're really excited to be toward the end of this project and hopefully getting this adopted in the next week.
Terrific. Thank you, Joel, for the umpteenth time. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Joel or anyone else on the team?
Yep, Matt Manley here. Just wanted, there were a couple of items that I pointed out to Tristan that the CTP could include. I just wanted to check to see if those have been added or if I need to include those additions in a motion related to a couple greenways and a modernization.
Right, so, yeah, sorry, Matt, you're breaking up a lot. Matt did send us an email, I think earlier this week or late last week, requesting the addition of Nix Road modernization and a couple of greenway projects. Nix Road, for those of you who aren't familiar, it is a 2-lane road in northeastern Hendersonville that has not previously been identified as having needs, but Matt noted he has received comments from the public about deficiencies along the road. Joel, do you want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, Matthew, we are adding those to the document, so those will be addressed. We'll include obviously the comments that you submitted us in the appendices, but we'll also wrap those projects into the CTP.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further questions or comments? If not, we will entertain a motion to pass this on to the board.
I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of the Elevate 2050 plan to the TAC board.
Thank you, Steve. If there's no further discussion, is there a second?
I will second that. This is
Thank you.
Lucy.
All right. With that, Asha, would you mind helping us out?
Sure. Asheville, Lucy Crone.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William High.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approve.
EPD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Flat Rock, excuse me, Flat Rock, Pat Christie.
Approve.
Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Dion Cooley. Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Approve.
Mars Hill, Nathan Bennett.
Approve.
RPO, Vicki Eastland. Waynesville, Elizabeth Teague.
Approve.
NCDOT Division 13, Doug Phillips. NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Hooray. Okay, with that, we will kick it over, again, I'll let Tristan introduce the I-40 Managed Lane.
Sure, I will give a quick introduction, and we have David Roy on the call. He is the Director of Innovative Finance at the DOD, or at the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. David, hopefully your mic is working. This was an item that was added. Thanks for setting the mood lighting. So this is an item that was added to the TCC agenda earlier this week. It's something that we just received an update on Friday afternoon. So apologies for the late addition, but I think given the timing of everything, we think it's important to make sure that folks are aware and aware of opportunity to move forward with it right now. So just a little bit of background. This relates to the project that was previously in the STIP, I-6054. That's the planned widening of I-40 from roughly exit 44 in Buncombe County to exit 27 in Haywood County. More technically, Monte Vista Road, not quite all the way to exit 44. It's been submitted as a widening since P5. It scored well enough to get into the developmental portion of the STIP, but has since fallen out. And it is a project that has been identified in the CTP for some time as needing mobility upgrades. And in the congestion management process, we do look at travel time reliability every 2 years. The last time we did that in 2023, I-40, essentially west of I-26, was the least reliable interstate segment we have that is not currently being addressed through a widening. So just to note on that. Some other background on why we're talking about this. We actually talked about this before in January of 2024. The MPO was requested to provide a letter of support to DOT to look at a feasibility study on managed lanes that did pass the TCC board. So NCDOT has been working on that study, looking heavily into the financial side of things, which David will present on. But all in all, and also to note, managed lanes are a recommendation for addressing congestion that was identified in the congestion management process in 2018. While this item specifically is a little bit rushed, this is something that has had some background and has had some considerations in the past. Before I jump into the prioritization side of things, if I could, I'll hand things off to David Roy to talk about some of the things they've been looking at as part of the study on this section of I-40. So, David, please take it away.
Thank you, and good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I apologize for not being there in person. We'll certainly make every effort to get to be there with you guys next time we talk about this. But again, as Tristan mentioned, my name is David Roy. I'm the Director of Innovative Finance for the Turnpike Authority. For those not familiar with the Turnpike, we are essentially the tolling arm for the state. We are a business unit of DOT, but we have some autonomy and things we can talk much more about at another time. I think maybe one key thing to note that we'll say every time probably we are together that tolling in North Carolina is a local decision. So we are not here to advocate for a particular solution. Our role is to help educate and provide information so that MPOs, RPOs across the state can make an informed decision on what is best for their project and their region. So that's essentially what my role is. We established the Office of Innovative Finance and Delivery about 18 months ago, really for this purpose, to support MPOs, RPOs across the state as they may look to consider tolling as a way to potentially accelerate some of the critical infrastructure. Of course, that's what we are here to talk about today. I don't have a formal presentation just given the timing of everything, but I did want to just briefly provide an overview of the process we followed, a high-level discussion of the findings, and then certainly we'll plan next month to be back in front of you with a much more detailed presentation about the traffic and revenue study, the financial analysis, managed lanes concepts in general, the Turnpike Authority, all the things you guys will probably have questions on. And as Tristan mentioned, we certainly understand this process has taken longer than we had hoped. Obviously, it has, given the nature of this project, there have been a number of iterations. We wanted to make sure we got the information right before we come back to you. Obviously, the events of the last year have stalled some of that, but we are mindful that P8 submission window is coming up. So we have been working closely with the STIP folks, Tristan, the division, to ensure that you guys have options moving forward so that you have the ability to progress this through P8 if that is the desire, without obviously having to make a decision, particularly on tolling or the managed lanes concept, until you have all of the information, have had an opportunity to ask whatever questions you may have, certainly do any public engagement or outreach that you think is necessary and warranted. And I think we'll talk more about those options that we've come up with here in a few minutes. But just at a high level, again, as was mentioned, this was a request from the MPO to the department and the Trump about 18 months ago to look at the I-40 widening project as a potential managed lanes project. So the first step in that is the department about 7 years ago implemented a toll policy that provided the framework for how we will look at these projects. And one of the key components of that is a financial feasibility tool. So before we go any further, we developed a really high-level Excel-based tool that helps us look at a project, take all of the kind of key inputs, volumes, value of times, commercial vehicle percentages, things like that. We dump it into this tool, and hopefully it spits out kind of a high-level indication of whether we think this project or the proposed project would generate sufficient revenues to help support not just the operations of the facility, but obviously cover at least some of the capital costs, the cost of construction. Obviously, the key reasons folks would consider tolling for one of the projects in their region. Could we support construction and again accelerate the project? So what we found in utilizing that tool is, because of some of the unique features of this particular project, particularly as it relates to commercial vehicles in the corridor, the results were unclear. Certainly from our perspective, we wanted more information before we thought we would be in position to provide any meaningful recommendation back to this group, or meaningful findings back to this group. So we worked with DOT leadership, and they agreed to support a planning level or level 1 sketch level traffic and revenue forecast to help us gather more information about this potential project. For those not overly familiar with the traffic and revenue forecasting process, there are essentially 3 levels in revenue studies. So level 1, a sketch level, just to give you kind of an indication, really is still a 40,000 foot view. It is a 3 to 6 month effort, dollar-wise, $1,000 or so effort. If this progresses, the next stage would be looking to do a planning level 2 study. That is a much more detailed study, some socioeconomic factors, et cetera, true modeling as much more detailed effort, 6 to 9 month additional effort. Scale economically about a $500,000 effort. And then the final step, if this were to progress to any kind of financing that the Turnpike Authority would be involved in, we would take that to what's called an investment grade report study. And that's roughly a year effort and $1 million-ish. So just wanted to lay that framework, because this still is in the very early stages, but it does give us a good indication, at least on the financial feasibility, I think, for hopefully you guys to begin thinking about what this could make sense for this project and the region. As part of that, we looked at 2 different scenarios. One was a single express lane or managed lane, similar to the project that has been submitted previously, a widening project from 4 to 6 lanes. So as opposed to an additional general purpose lane in each direction, it was contemplated that additional capacity would be an express lane or managed lane. Given the nature of the corridor, particularly as it relates to the number of commercial vehicles in the corridor, we also looked at it as potential widening to 8 lanes or 2 express lanes in each direction. And that would help facilitate trucks in the express lanes. And there are several reasons for that, particularly as it relates to revenues. Larger vehicles typically pay a higher toll rate when they're utilizing the lanes. So they can make up a small percentage of traffic in the lanes, but it can have a significant impact on revenue. Sometimes you will see 5% commercial vehicles making up less than 5% of vehicles in the lane, but over 20% of the overall revenue generated from that. So one of the reasons we also wanted to express direction or why at a high level, what
You're breaking
at a
up
high-
a little bit there. If you could repeat what you just said.
so, sorry, did I break up?
Yeah.
Okay, apologies. So yeah, so again, as I was mentioning, we as part of the level 1 traffic and revenue study, we looked at 2 different scenarios. One being a widening from 4 to 6 lanes, similar to what has been previously submitted in SPOT, except obviously that additional lane would be in the form of an express lane or managed lane. We also looked at a widening to 8 lanes or 2 express in each direction, which would accommodate commercial vehicles or large trucks in the lanes. And one of the reasons to consider that potentially is obviously for revenue purposes. Adding commercial vehicles can generate significant revenue for a project, given that toll rates are typically higher on commercial vehicles. Hopefully you guys can still hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So at a high level, what the results showed, the findings from that traffic and revenue study and the financial analysis that followed, is that in both scenarios, both the 1 express lane and the 2 express lane scenarios, revenues generated on the corridor would be sufficient to cover all of the operational costs for the facility, both obviously toll operations, but also roadway maintenance of the corridor, as well as a portion of the capital cost associated with the project. So, for example, in the 1 express lane scenario, I think we are looking at somewhere around 40 to 50% of the overall capital cost. Very similar story in the 2 express lane scenario, once you factor in the added cost of adding the additional capacity. And again, I will certainly be back in front of you next month with a much more detailed presentation on those findings. But at a high level, again, what we found, what we're seeing in the analysis is that projected revenues would be sufficient to cover both operations and some portion of the capital cost, the construction cost. That is not unexpected for projects in North Carolina and really across the country. There are very few standalone toll facilities, greenfield or otherwise, that tolling can cover 100% of their capital cost. And in fact, in North Carolina to date, there's not been a single project where tolling supported 100% of their capital costs, typically somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 80%. So very consistent with what we're seeing here. And again, apologies, just given the timing of things, we didn't have the opportunity to pull together what I thought would be a meaningful presentation for you guys, but we'll certainly be back in front of you next month to provide a lot more information around the study, finding the turnpike, managed lanes, all the things I'm sure you have questions on. Tristan, that kind of, at a high level, summarizes what we've been doing. I'm certainly happy to take any questions now. I think obviously you were going to talk P8 prioritization, submittals, but certainly happy to take any questions on what we're doing across findings or
So David, to sum it up, the study found that managed lanes on I-40 from exit 44 to exit 27 would be likely financially viable.
The revenue generated would be sufficient to cover the toll operations and some portion of the construction cost. And the key piece to that, obviously, when you're thinking about prioritization, one of the inputs for prioritization is, of course, cost to the state. So one of the ways that tolling a facility can help accelerate a project through the prioritization process, of course, is if you reduce the overall cost to the state. So just thinking round numbers, if you have $1 billion project, we think tolling can support 500 million of that cost. That reduces the cost to the state by 500 million. That is what's scored in prioritization. Obviously, that can help it score higher and get funded sooner in the prioritization process. I guess maybe the other thing that I failed to mention, a number of years ago, the General Assembly also wanted to provide incentives two regions for finding alternate funding solutions such as tolling. So they implemented a bonus allocation component to this, and it is up to $100 million in bonus allocation can be received on a project to be used on other regional priorities. That is based essentially on the revenue that is brought to the table to help offset the cost of the state. So in either case, this project was shown to support the full $100 million in bonus allocation that would be received should it move forward as a toll project.
Thank you, David. Any other questions for David?
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Kristen, I actually had a question. This is Elizabeth, too. Did he say that the tolling potentially would start at exit 44?
That is what's been looked at. Yeah, so exit 44, the Patton Avenue, Smoky Park exit in Buncombe County.
Tristan, if you
why
have that.
Why not closer to the gorge? Because this is what this is about, right? Like at exit 20.
That has not been looked at as a project and has not been submitted previously. So the reason why what was looked at is exit 27 to exit 44 is that is a project that has been submitted in the past and did score well enough to at least be looked at in the developmental part of the STIP.
Well, I would say that given the commuter patterns that we've seen growing between Haywood County and Buncombe County, that there would be a lot of resistance for any additional tolling or costs, particularly to the people of Haywood County, with even the suggestion of that. I would support looking at what I would see as a fair approach to really examine kind of the freight traffic starting after the exits to Canton, Waynesville, Lake Junaluska, and sort of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I think that's really going to create a big issue, and I would encourage us, if we're going to study it, to look at some alternate and reduced areas of I-40 for tolling.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think tolling is well known for its popularity.
Right.
You suggesting I'm not the most guy in the room?
Yeah, I mean, to note that section, essentially going from exit 27 out, has a lot of environmental challenges. I mean, not even including the storm, adding additional lanes through there, whether they're managed or not, would be a tough endeavor. And to note, there are laws on the books that restrict the ability to change existing travel lanes into tolled lanes, with some exceptions. So most likely, if we're talking about managed or tolled facilities, we're talking about adding additional lanes to a corridor. That section, I think there's improvements that are definitely needed. Doing the widening, I mean, I'll look at the division, but there'd be some serious challenges to get a project through there.
Hey, David, this is Vicki. Lady Scott, RPO. I had a question for you. Elizabeth brought up an issue that when we were getting the letters of support in January of last year was discussed at the RPO, and the question was, is there a mechanism when you're looking at managed lanes, that local traffic and commuters can somehow get discounts or cards or something that reduces the impact? Because I think that's what Elizabeth is referencing. And to Tristan's point, Elizabeth, carbon reduction shows that this corridor that we're talking about from 44 to 27 is the least reliable. So that's why we're looking at it for these lanes.
Vicki, you're
All right.
correct. I'm just concerned about the impact to the local commuter.
Right. So, to kind of provide a little bit more background on that, and, you know, just to be clear, what we're talking about when we're talking about managed lanes is that most likely, or almost definitely, the existing lanes on I-40 would not be tolled. So the existing lanes would remain essentially as they are today. The added lanes would be. It's generally known as high occupancy toll lanes. It's essentially an evolution from the high occupancy vehicle or carpool lanes that have been instituted in the past. In general, studies have shown that the high occupancy vehicle lanes were not very effective. That, you know, trying to skirt by when not actually carpooling, ramifications didn't tend to be that great. High occupancy tolls in general tended to be more effective and obviously added more revenues as part of that. So to know really what we're talking about is added lanes being tolled, and they're essentially being a choice for people on the corridor between the existing lanes or utilizing managed lanes that would be priced to make sure that they remain reliable and that travel on the managed lanes will remain reliable even if the other lanes are not. So just to give a picture on that, you know, based on David's study and NCDOT study, they did note that the 8-lane section would be more likely to generate more revenue. And I think we'd still probably want to look at would 8 lanes be appropriate throughout, or maybe 8 to 6 lanes, something like that. But in general, this is the typical cross-section from the prioritization process. We probably want to scooch that median in as much as we could to save some space. Always scooching. And then to talk about why we would consider managed lanes, since their popularity is not one of their strong suits. In general, we know that I-40 is definitely one of the higher, if not the highest priorities that we've heard from Haywood County. Again, we've seen it as one of the least reliable interstate corridors, and increasingly so. Having a project in prioritization as a managed lanes project versus a simple widening helps it to score better. And the reason that David touched on is because of the benefit cost aspect of scoring. 25% of the score for a statewide mobility project is benefit cost. By having a managed lanes project, you are essentially assuming that the revenues from the project will help to cover a percentage of the capital costs needed, and therefore reduce the financial request to NCDOT. So your cost essentially goes down in the prioritization process, but your benefits remain the same. And so a project is almost definitely going to score better as a managed lanes project. One thing I think we heard about previously is why would we consider this here when we didn't do managed lanes on I-26? The thing to note is most of I-26 was funded in 2014. In terms of statewide mobility projects, we have gotten one project that was funded at that tier in P4, so in 2016. And since that time, we have seen projects falling out. So we have not received a new project in the statewide mobility tier since 2016, and since that time, we have seen projects fall out. I think the general story there is that, especially financially, things have changed for transportation projects. And therefore, if this is a high priority, thinking out of the box of solutions is something that can help give our projects a better shot at being funded. Also, David touched on, the funding from these managed lanes, providing for the maintenance of the facility as well as operations. There is also a bonus allocation based on the financial study from NCDOT. It would be expected to be the maximum amount of bonus allocations, i.e. that would be $100 million that would come to the MPO to look at programming additional improvements in Buncombe and Haywood counties within eligibilities. There are incentives that could be provided, and I believe, David, other projects in the state have or are planning to provide incentives for carpoolers and transit vehicles. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the I-77 express lanes currently operating in Charlotte have what's known as HOV3+, meaning that users with 3 or more people in their car, passenger vehicles, can utilize the lanes without paying the toll. Transit vehicles, same story. Obviously, emergency vehicles, by legislation, motorcycles are also allowed to use the lanes without paying a toll. And to an earlier question regarding discounts, we do have a discount program for people who get a NC Quick Pass. It's our transponder program, and maintain a prepaid account. They do receive a 50% discount on their tolls. So that's not specific to any one user group or zip code locations, anything like that, but that is an option available to folks to help ensure they pay the lowest rate available.
Excellent, thank you, David. And to note, I think when we talked about this in January, there was some discussion about kind of the idea of relieving congestion for just the managed lanes and just for people who are able to pay for it. David, correct me again if I'm wrong, studies have shown that managed lanes applications tend to reduce congestion and improve reliability for all the travel lanes on the corridor, not just those managed lanes.
Obviously, you're adding capacity in the corridor, so you're pulling people out of the general purpose lanes into the managed lanes or the express lanes. So that generally improves performance on the general purpose lanes, even for those that aren't paying a toll. Now, obviously, that is presuming that otherwise those additional lanes would not exist, which, it's obviously a question for the region on could we get these lanes without some alternative source.
Right.
I have a question for David before you move on. Between the 1 express lane option and the 2 express lane option, I was led to believe a year ago when we last discussed this that trucks are only allowed in express lanes if there were 2 lanes. Am I remembering that correctly?
Generally speaking, yes. Certainly, we have not explored a scenario where we would allow commercial vehicles in a 1 express lane alternative.
And because we have such a high truck percentage on this corridor and trucks pay a higher toll, I think that's worth noting.
That's correct. As I mentioned, right, larger vehicles do typically pay a multiple of what a passenger vehicle would pay, and in some cases that can be as high as 6 or 7 times during peak period. So trucks, commercial vehicles will oftentimes make up a small percentage of overall usage of the express lanes, but from a revenue perspective, it could be 20 or 30% of the overall revenue.
That suddenly just brings up another question. In your experience at the toll authority, do we see a lot of trucks that are from outside the region, from outside of North Carolina, utilize express lanes because of billing, because of tracking them down for payment? Or is it something more that regional and local trucks utilize more? Because I don't know offhand statistic, but I imagine a large percent of the trucks on that corridor are not registered in North Carolina, or either coming through from Tennessee or South Carolina. So I just wonder if there's a particular wrinkle we need to be aware of.
Yeah, certainly. So in North Carolina, the only express lane facility that is open and operating, the I-77 North Express lanes, it is currently a combination of 2 express lanes and a one express lane in each direction segment. So trucks are not allowed to use those lanes today. There is a project, the I-77 South express lanes, that is moving forward as a public-private partnership, and it would be 2 express lanes in each direction, and that is contemplated to allow for commercial vehicles. And there are discussions of widening the north section to a second lane to also allow for commercial vehicles in that corridor. But you're right. What we see across the country, certainly there are a number of through trips for commercial vehicles, folks coming from out of state, O&Ds, from I'm sure in this case, Tennessee would be a big one. You mentioned South Carolina. Obviously, that is harder to collect in some cases. There is a percentage of the population that is just going to choose not to pay their tolls, and we do have mechanisms to pursue those people, but there is in the industry, it's termed leakage. It's a percentage of the population that chooses not to pay, and for out of state, that is a little higher than in state. But I guess I would say that with all of that is included in the study. We have assumptions based on historical averages, not just in North Carolina, but across the country that has included leakage assumption in the financial analysis. And of course, as you may be aware, Tennessee is also pursuing express lanes in their state. They've actually called them choice lanes, which I think our folks are very jealous of, because I think it does convey the message that Tristan mentioned earlier, that this is a choice for users. It is certainly not a situation where you're putting all of the lanes. And in fact, in North Carolina, you're not allowed to do that. There is incentive and interest in pursuing reciprocity agreements with states like Tennessee and South Carolina that will hopefully help with some of that concern.
Okay, is there further questions for David? Okay, if there's not, we have 2 options proposed here.
Actually, we added a third. In terms of why we're bringing this up for prioritization, I-40 is not currently on our submittal list. And to note, NCDOT cannot submit a managed lanes project. Only MPOs or RPOs can. So for us, we're submitting projects or determining our submittal list this month. If this is an idea folks want to recommend to pursue, at this point in prioritization, this is the time for that potential decision. And so again, why now? We just got the results of the study, and the deadline for submittals is this month. The 3 options we now have is one, we can go ahead and add I-40 managed lanes as a PA submittal. We've been told if we were to add this as one of our submittals, Division 14 would take a project that we've removed off our list to make room for I-40. So essentially all of our projects would still be submitted, and we would be adding I-40 managed lanes as a submittal right now. I think either way, we said that this is an idea that deserves more discussion, education, and outreach. And also to note that, David's been very clear with us that even if we submit, there's likely going to be, or there will be multiple ways for that decision to potentially be reversed, should the MPO choose to do so. Option two, we don't add I-40 managed lanes as a PA submittal. Again, this is something that's coming up fairly last minute. So that would give us an additional 2 years before a decision could be, I said it needs to be made, but just could be reconsidered. We've been told that Division 14 is still planning to submit I-40 as widening, just not as a managed lanes project if we don't submit I-40 ourselves. And option three that was brought up with us yesterday is we can potentially add I-40 as a widening as one of our PA submittals and make a decision on whether or not that should be a managed lanes project later. That deadline, correct me if I'm wrong, is January.
Right.
So we would essentially have I-40 in prioritization, and if we choose to do so, we can change it to a managed lanes project should the MPO choose to do so by January. Are there any, David, I tried to sum things up. Are there any other options or options within the options that we need to cover?
Yeah, and this one obviously came about understanding the time constraint and that, you know, this is a major decision for the MPO and the region, and want to make sure that you have all of the information needed to make an informed decision, but also an opportunity to do that education and outreach to understand what may be the best solution for the region. So this is similar to a process that was followed from another project as part of P7.0 in another region. In that case, both the MPO and the division submitted the project. The MPO did ultimately decide to convert their submittal to a tolled project, so they were able to see how both the tolled and the non-tolled versions scored as part of P7.0 prioritization, and then make the determination on which project to advance through the STIP. So I guess that, Tristan, would be the only other option if there were enough slots and the division also wanted to submit the I-40 widening. You would essentially have the same project fight until the MPO had the opportunity to make a decision on the managed lane later this year.
Right. I think one last note is, while this may, this is an important consideration, but, in talking about following up on Joel's somewhat dreary prioritization forecast, there's not a whole lot of funding available, or at least there's not projected to be. So just to note, if a project is successful in this round, the most likely scenario of success is it would get in the developmental part of the SIP and likely have to compete again. But if we got into the developmental part of the SIP, that could open up resources to do some preliminary engineering and dig a bit more into the project.
And as everyone knows, it takes 7 to 10 years to use interstate documents. The sooner we start, the better.
Janet, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, if we did option 3, would we be submitting it as 6 lanes or as 8 lanes?
I think that would be up to the MPO. I think in the past we've submitted it as a 6-lane project. But to David's and DOT's analysis, I believe an 8-lane was found to generate more revenue as part of that.
And Tristan, in conversations with David Wasserman and Lee yesterday, they were comfortable deferring that decision until January as well. So I think at this point, we would just need a widening project submitted, and the determination around 6 or 8 lanes could also be made later.
Janet, I will mention that in P5, when I-40 went in, there was discussion between the MPO and divisions about looking at 8 lanes from Monte Vista or 44 to Liberty Road and 6 beyond that. So I don't know if that's something Turnpike could work with split profile, but just putting that out there.
And Tristan and I had a long conversation yesterday, but so much of this is in Division 14, I don't want to, I don't want to speak for 14, but there's a couple things about it that, as the design would continue, if that was the direction, if it was identified that 6 lanes would be sufficient and work well, could be considered. Historically, in talking with some folks down in Division 10 where they have the I-77 lanes, the regret they kind of shared with us was should have went with 2 to start with. That flexibility, having that extra capacity would be a big deal, and it also would impact the amount of truck traffic that's available. And the more commercial traffic you move into that, the better the general purpose lanes run. And that the ultimate goal is to increase mobility. And really, the cross section from a 6 to an 8 is not that much. It's not that much different. I mean, you obviously have to add a little more width, but it in the long run, you don't have to worry about going back either. And I will say, just in a general conversation, there was a mention about maintenance, and y'all all know it costs more to build a road now. It also costs more to maintain a road now. And with the managed lanes project, those lanes are managed. The funds for that are generated from the folks driving on it, and they are spent right there. They're not taken into the pot for the county and then spent on other projects. It goes right back to that location. And like in the case of I-77, and I worked down there for a while as they were finishing them up, so I got a little bit more experience. I got a small taste of it. The I-77 Mobility Group manages those. They manage the maintenance on those lanes. Well, while they're there, they also take care of the general purpose lanes. Now, DOT has to pay for that. That comes out of our actual maintenance funds, but instead of having the crew, and some of our maintenance departments have very high vacancy rates because we're not super competitive. Instead of having to take the crew out of a primary road or a secondary road where they need to replace a pipe or clear side distance to send them to I-40, you've got folks that are already there that can step over and pick up the debris out of the road faster. They can, catch the pothole before it gets big. Things like that. If they're striping, then we can partner with that striping to keep striping better. So what you see is an overall increase in the level of service on the general purpose lanes too, as far as maintenance goes, because of that dedicated group out there. Still costs us money to take care of the general purpose lanes, but having those folks there makes that reliability better. Something to consider.
And I can add a little more context to that if that's okay. So by statute, any toll revenue generated on a facility has to stay on that facility or a contiguous toll facility. So to the point, it cannot be taken to any other part of the state and used on any other project. It has to stay on that project. And when we develop an express lane or managed lanes project, the project is defined fence to fence, meaning that should revenues be sufficient to cover not just the operations of the managed lanes, they can also be used to cover the maintenance of the general purpose lanes. So that's correct that there's a contract that the 77 Mobility Partners has whereby the department actually pays Mobility Partners to maintain the general purpose lanes as well as the managed lanes. In reality, the revenue that the department is actually receiving from those managed lanes as part of some revenue sharing provisions that is actually sufficient to begin reimbursing the department for that cost of the general purpose lanes as well. And that's a public-private partnership. That is a different thing than we're talking about here today, but I did just want to say, that's right. Revenue has to stay on that project, and that project is fence to fence.
Thanks, David. Jana?
Thanks. I don't want to overthink this because the likelihood of funding is very low. So I just want to go ahead and make a motion to do option 3 and submit widening as like a blanket statement of I-40, and we'll consider additional information as we receive it and make a final decision by January.
Okay.
This is Vicky, I'll second that.
Thank you, Vicki. Asha?
Asheville, Lucy Crown.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William Hine.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approved.
TPD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Flat Rock, Pat Christie. Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Bianculli.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley. Martell, Nathan Bennett.
Aye.
RPO, Vicki Eastland.
Aye.
Waynesville, Elizabeth Teague.
Reluctantly, aye.
Can you repeat that? Elizabeth, you broke up.
Oh, aye.
NCDOT Division 13, Doug Phillips.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Terrific, everybody.
Thank
you, David. We'll look forward to talking to you soon. Hopefully, maybe we can do this sooner than later. This will be probably still a serious discussion.
For years to come. Absolutely.
Probably not to wait till January.
Yeah.
Okay, with that said, P8.
Okay, prioritization update. This is the update for our final submittals. I won't go through all of this. Just as a reminder, prioritization, that's the step between long-range plans and determining what gets funded. It's governed by the Strategic Highway Investment, or Strategic Transportation Investment Act of 12. September is when our project submittals are due. This is something that requires action. Really quickly, in terms of where projects come from for the prioritization cycle, the MPO gets 18 submittals per mode. That's what we call our new submittals. There's also carryover projects that are either sibling projects or our projects that were recently defunded in the STIP. And so those are automatically put into the system as a carryover project unless there are votes to not do that. So I won't go through all of our carryover projects. You all have seen this list before, and in the interest of time, I'll just note that that list remains unchanged unless there's any, if anyone would like to make a comment on the carryover projects. Okay. As we noted last month, some of the changes to the prioritization process include a 30% reduction in submittals for this round of prioritization. So that's a 30% reduction for everybody, all MPOs, RPOs, and divisions. There's fewer submittals. And just as a reminder, the main justification for that is we've been through 2 rounds of prioritization where no to very, very few projects were funded, yet somehow the number of submittals kept going up. So we were considering more projects even though there was less and less funding. So the prioritization work group agreed to a 30% reduction. That moves our submittals from 26 to 18. Daniel?
Did the prioritization work group put together an estimate of how much money we were saving on express designs by submitting fewer projects?
No, I have asked the question several times of how much money is being spent on express designs. The general answer I get is it costs less to do those express designs earlier than to wait till later.
And it doesn't matter because we'll be doing express designs on more projects than just what we're submitting, because in the future, anything we submit has to have the express design.
Yeah, if there were stock in express designs,
I would buy it.
I would buy also to note, there are, or NCDOT released funding projections as a disclaimer. You know, these projections are a snapshot of how things look right now. Those tend to change as updated cost estimates for existing projects come in. And over the past few years, those projections tend to go down, especially over the 2 years between when we submit projects and when projects are programmed. So right now, we're looking at about $1.6 billion available for statewide mobility. In Region G, I think this is the first time we haven't had a negative number in Region G since 2018.
Which accounts for the length of the carryover project.
There we go. So we've got $186 million available in Region G. Division 13, $132 million, and Division 14, $235 million. But all in all, compared to some of the previous rounds, these are not very large numbers. 1.6 billion, that's a whole lot of money, but that's basically, yeah, that's all the interstate projects and freeway projects competing across the state. There might be one or two winners, not a whole lot. So in terms of our new submittals, I won't read through all of these. They're available in your packet. We read through all of these last month. I will just note the changes that were made and approved by the prioritization subcommittee. So in Buncombe County, the change that we put through between when you saw the draft list last month and the final list now, we removed the Sand Hill Road at Sand Hill School Road intersection improvement project. We replaced that with Klingman Avenue at Patton and Hilliard Avenues for multiple intersection improvements. The main justification is the Sand Hill Road project scored okay last round, not terribly well. We think there's a chance the Klingman Avenue intersections may score better. They're part of the recent, or technically still ongoing Patton Avenue corridor study, and the Klingman Avenue intersections overlap with the state streets for Western North Carolina priority areas, whereas the Sand Hill intersection does not. We did receive another public comment where we were asked if the Weaverville Highway / Merriman Avenue modernization project we submitted previously may be a better project versus the Elkwood Avenue modernization. I gotta say, our region is growing some prioritization nerds. It's kind of fantastic. It's a really, really good question. I do think there's a lot of merit on the Weaverville Merriman project. The one thing that we noted in prioritization to keep it the same was that Weaverville Highway scored really well, but the updated cost estimate is over $120 million. And that was us squeezing the project as much as we could in the express design. So that's a good project that might be a good candidate later on when there's more money available. In Haywood County, I think, given the previous points, we will take off the Delwood Road project. Steve, if you're willing and ready to take on the Delwood Road project, we'll replace that with the I-40 widening for now, and consider changing that to managed lanes over the next few months. So that is one project we'll put in. The changes we did make was actually to Delwood Road. On the draft list, we showed it going from the 2374 interchange to Jonathan Creek Road. We're recommending changing that to Russ Avenue. That shaves off about 2.4 miles, and given the funding projections, we think that would make sense. In Henderson County, the list of new submittals is unchanged. To note, we did have some discussion with the Hendersonville board member who requested the intersection of Howard Gap and Sugarloaf be looked at. I believe Division 14 is considering submitting that project. That also shows up on the Safe Streets for Western North Carolina plan. Madison County, highway submittals unchanged. For Bikehead and Buncombe County, we made one change to remove the old Haywood Road sidewalks with the North Blue Ridge Road sidewalks in Black Mountain. Both of those projects scored well in the last round of prioritization. And I believe Division 13 is looking at submitting the old Haywood Road sidewalks in our place. Haywood County, the list is unchanged. We did receive a comment on a need for sidewalks on Allen's Creek Road. That was a previous prioritization submittal. Division 14, again, stop me if I'm wrong, plans to submit that project in coordination with the town in the MPO. Bikehead for Henderson, the list is unchanged. Madison, unchanged as well. The rail list, same as it has been, passenger rail is on the list. And public transportation, actually, I do think we have to make a change and remove the mobile fare collection system. As it's been noted, that is probably not eligible in prioritization. So with that, that is our submittal list. MPO decisions will be needed on express designs by November, but moving forward, we'll be going through the usual cycle of prioritization. Lucy, do you have your hand raised?
Thanks, Tristan. Can you please repeat the comment about Elkwood Avenue? I didn't quite catch it all.
Sure. So on our new highway submittal list, we have the modernization of Elkwood Avenue. And so that is a project that would be going from Riverside Drive, where it's actually Old Burnsville Highway, over to Merriman Avenue. That is a project that during the MTV process, the city of Asheville and the town of Woodfin noted that sidewalks along that corridor would be kind of a joint priority for both jurisdictions. Also, I mean, beyond that, we've noted that there are some definite highway deficiencies. The intersection at Riverside Drive tends to back up. For some reason, it's 4 lanes on Old Burnsville Highway until it's not after a couple hundred feet. And the intersection with Lakeshore is not a great intersection, to put it lightly. And actually, the section north of there shows up in roadway safety reports as well. So we think a modernization could cover a lot of the needs along that corridor. The public comment was, it asked, it did note that they supported the Elkwood Avenue project, but they asked if the Beaverville Highway / Merriman Avenue modernization project might be a better project. That's a project that goes, or previously has gone from Wembley Drive, where the road diet on Merriman currently kind of peters out, and it becomes a 2-lane cross section over to New Stock Road. And that is a project that was looking at modernizing that road with a side path. And so it included intersection improvements as well as complete streets improvements. It scored well in the last round of prioritization. I'll also note its cost estimate was, I think, $16 million. Since then, there was an express design, and the updated cost is more than $120 million, which might be very difficult in this round.
Thank you. Thank you, Tristan.
Also, Tristan, the RPO today, TCC voted to transfer one project from NC 151 to exit 37, 1923, either modernization or upgrade roadway, whichever scores the best.
Okay.
So the NPO will need to approve that transfer.
Okay.
And the rail project modernization begins in northwest Buncombe on that dark section of rail all the way to the Tennessee line. That will be partial NPO.
Right, so you don't need approval for this?
I don't need approval, but I'm just letting you know.
Okay. So for today, we do need approval of the project submittal list with a note on replacing the Delwood Avenue projects with I-40, as well as accepting the project on 2374 from the RPO. 1920.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Okay, if not, we will entertain a motion to approve the list.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Matt. Is there a second? Or any further discussion?
Just for the benefit of the Henderson County folks, Division 14 also plans to submit, maybe not the whole corridor, but a section of US 64 going out towards Transylvania County. That's been identified as a priority before, and we're finishing up an express design on that now.
Thanks, Steve. You're still waiting on someone to second.
Oh, second.
Thank you, Steve. All right, Asha, would you please
Sure.
take that?
Asheville, Lindsey Brown.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William Hyde.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approved.
DPD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Flat Rock, Pat Christie. Apple Country Public Transit, Jenna Bianculli.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Approved.
Forest Hill, Nathan Bennett.
Aye.
RPO, Vicki Eastland.
Aye.
Waynesville, Elizabeth Teague. NCDOT Division 13, Doug Phillips.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. We are only 90 minutes into our 75-minute window. Excited. With that, we'll kick it off to Daniel. Do you want to introduce Tristan?
Have at it, Daniel.
Have at it. This is going to be relatively short compared to the previous topics on the agenda. I got to mention this at last month's meeting that we would be bringing functional class changes to the board, to the group. And just for, slides not presenting, and just to talk quickly about where we are, what's already been done, and what we're asking for today, will be a recommendation at the end. For those not familiar with the functional classification system, this is maintained for FHWA as defined as a system of rating different facilities based on the objectives that they serve in the community, either as long distance passenger services or local access roads. Roads tend to be good at one or the other, and we try to watch the community that a particular facility is serving and categorize it appropriately. And the 7 categories range from the highest mobility facilities, interstates, down to just your most local roads, which are not technically part of the system, or in most regards. And the arterials are supposed to serve connecting different communities versus collectors that just work within a community, collecting traffic and eventually getting them to higher order facilities. And the main thing this is used for by FHWA is funding eligibility. Generally, to receive federal funds, a roadway needs to be on the federal functional classification system. And that's agnostic to if it's a state-owned road or a county-owned road or a city-owned road. Vicki was telling me, but she stepped out, that maybe for the local roads, you have to be a major collector, not a minor collector. But so there may be some small nuances there, but generally, if you're not on the federal system, you're not going to receive federal funding. It's a good relationship there. The second thing is a lot of federal statistics come out related to the system. If you want to know how many vehicle miles were driven on major collectors, those numbers are generated every month, and crashes by type and other data sets. But then there are also a lot of other secondary uses that different states use this data set for around the nation, programming being one of the important ones, but since we just went through our programming process, you realize we don't talk about the federal system as much. That's not how North Carolina does things. Though it can still affect some other things like minimum design standards. And so what has happened is, since we've just had a census, a lot of communities are taking into account where their growth has been over the last 10 years, where we have updated traffic information, and really just asking ourselves what has, what has changed in are the classifications that we have, matching the truth on the ground. And really, we can take an opportunity anytime we want to request a change, on file. The census, the FHWA has opened this window after the census, knowing everybody wants to do a lot of changes to kind of allow a quick and efficient bulk edit to the network. But that window is closing in November, so we're looking for any recommendations from the planning organizations to be submitted by mid-September, so we can get an application together to FHWA in time. But if we don't, or something's missed, if it stirs your thoughts about a road and you want to request other changes, we could always make additional changes later. So this is not the only opportunity. But that being said, what has been done, DOT created a process with FHWA to kind of make sure we would meet all the requirements, and a review committee started meeting in March. I think was about the first time I heard about it, to look at lane use and traffic and where roads are in the current hierarchy. And generally, there's this stepwise process where larger roads are fed by smaller roads, and there's there's a progression of hierarchy. And they sent me the results at the end of June, and by end of June I mean June 28th, when they then requested comments by the end of the month. So there was a very quick turnaround as we started this conversation, and then incorporated some comments. And in the middle of July, we started meeting with planning and organization staff, division staff, and in August, we finalized the list that you see in your agenda, the pretty table. And this is the list we plan to submit to FHWA for changes. And I'll just say about half of the changes are new facilities we want to add to the functional classification system. And about half are changes to existing roads. And then just to highlight some stuff. So first thing that was looked at was adding new roads. The only one in the region I really know of is Lake Davidson River Connector. New facility needs some sort of classification. We'll get it added. Classifications extended on existing facilities to serve new growth. where we are in this office is a good example. New Leicester has a particular classification. I'll just assume it's a minor arterial, but that minor arterial classification eventually changes to a collector as you progress north out of town into a more residential rural environment. But where that transition happens today is not where it was 10 years ago. So there's a request in the table to extend the higher order facility out a little farther. And as urban areas mature, you kind of see this pattern on the edge of the development. Several minor collectors proposed to serve underserved areas. Same thought experiment happening, but this is a little more on the outskirts of development. South Asheville, East Asheville, south and east Hendersonville, south and east Waynesville, were all looked at, and new facilities added that are carrying significant traffic, serving those rural areas. Some roads adjusted to fit hierarchy and smooth transitions. There were some artifacts in the old database. The example I like to use is like NC 280, but between Brevard and Mills River. In town, they were both primary arterials. Between town, they were minor arterials, so that created a lot of switching in the data. But once you're traveling between towns, the land use is pretty consistent. We decided to smooth the corridor and make it all primary arterial. That's what we're recommending. Similar things were done on US 276, US 64, some roads in Canton and Clyde. And then we also looked at some technical fixes where classifications started or ended sometimes awkwardly. One of the examples would be Crab Creek in Transylvania County, major collector, and then just ends, has no classification north of Everett, but the road itself goes up to US 64, and it's logical that the facilities connect to other major facilities. Clyde and Clanton, we did some cleanup of the back roads around there. Marshall, another good example. And then two roads were removed, not two roads, two segments were removed because they weren't really roads. One of them at some point was a river that got digitized as a road. Don't know why, before my time. Or heck, I did it when I first started, who knows? I've been through a few censuses at this point. So those are the broad strokes. The entire table is in your agenda. We are looking for USPO's recommendation on this, so we can take it to FHWA. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at it in the agenda? Were there any questions, any concerns or changes?
Yeah, it says here for Broadway Street, an increase from principal arterial to interstate. The second to last one.
Second to last one. Well, that's
I think we discussed the opposite.
Yeah, some of them when we made the table got switched. Yeah, that's the small piece of the ramp. No, is that Broadway? It ties into Broadway. Lexington. Yeah, that's the ramp, but there's no traffic. So that's between Merriman and Broadway. We will make that description clearer. Yes, there's like a section and an intersection before the ramp continues. Yes. I haven't made the tables for me, so if there are questions, we will pursue them.
If anyone doesn't have any other questions, we'll take a motion to send this to the board.
And I'll clarify, because the guidance says that all ramps should be the higher order facility they connect to. So since that's the ramp going to the interstate, the ramp itself is considered an interstate.
I see. That makes sense.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the board with the change in description or gives further description on that, the one mentioned, Lexington Avenue.
Bless you, Steve. All right. Someone provide us with a second, and then we will be done with voting after this. Second. Thank you. All right, Tasha, would you take us around?
Asheville, Lindsey Crone.
Aye.
Art, Jessica Morris.
Aye.
Buncombe County, William High.
Approved.
Buncombe Transit, Chloe Donahoe.
Approved.
TPD, Daniel Sellers.
Approved.
Flat Rock, Pat Christie. Apple Country Public Transit, Jana Bianculli.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Matt Manley.
Approve.
Orange Hill, Nathan Bennett.
Approve.
Waynesville, Elizabeth Teague. NCDOT Division 13, Doug Phillips.
Aye.
NCDOT Division 14, Steve Williams.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Okay, with that, we'll take it to 2513 update. Nathan is not here today, so I believe Chris is presenting.
I am. It's rejoining me as a panelist. There we go. Lost my ability to share there earlier. Showing up on my screen, but not there it is. There we go. Yeah, just bringing an update for the 2513 project. Nathan was able to join us today, so I'm giving an update in his stead. First off, we'll start with 2513 AAAB, which is the section around exit 44. That includes work on I-40 and the interchange upgrade and some work upgrading I-26 of the I-40-240 interchange. Current operations going through, we have some sewer lines, substructures going on. The phase 2 traffic configuration that it references is actually we're going to be closing the outside lanes, and that's going to be for around 18 months. Duration for that one. The upcoming work, a lot of that will be done once we get those closures in place with the triple barrel culvert extension, as well as our walls, which is going to allow us to install the new ramp down to Smoky Park Highway. The expected completion date for this project is March of 2029. On to 2513 AC, which is what's the current I-240 from the I-40 interchange to Haywood Road. We're still in the design process on that, but we are getting closer to having that completed. Right now, we're mainly working through the updates from the O&R from the BD section, getting those implemented. There's no major design changes with those. It's just mostly cost containment and matching the BD section from the O&R process we had. Again, that one we're hoping to, right now we have in the books to be let November of 2026. Talks on there, the right-of-way acquisition is complete, and the big one on that one is the relocations. All those offers have been made, and we have most of those completed. And then we're ongoing work with all the utility relocations. There are several on there that we're having to move and adjust, but should have all those done in time for the let in November. And then to 2513 BD. It's the design build project that goes from Haywood Road up to Broadway. Working through the plans with the design build team now. Have a lot of parallel paths we're taking to get those completed. Got a lot of submittals in. The intersection details, most of that's multimodal, and there are meetings lined up with the city and some stakeholders on those to get those worked out so that, make sure the community is good with those details. Our design noise report, that has been ongoing right now. They have completed the monitoring. They're working through the validation, and hopefully we'll have all that ready. It's draft in January and the final in March. Right-of-way acquisition is going on with it. Most of that is early acquisition. All of those have been approached, and we're hoping to move to full right-of-way acquisition beginning in November. Again, utility coordination is a large one of this project. There's a lot of major utilities that's pretty much every week meeting on that, getting that moving through, and will be ongoing throughout the project. And the big one is construction expected to begin summer of next year, 2026. As with all of our design build projects, we have to update our environmental impact statement as we go through. The draft one was, or the first one was in 2023. And right now we're re-evaluating that document and tracking all the changes. A lot of those, as with a design build project, you begin with a scope and like a 25 to 30% plan. And as the teams are selected with their alternatives, all those changes have to be tracked and resubmitted. Also, this project, we did an optimization and refinement, which created even more changes in order to reduce the cost of the project. So all those are tracked and put in the document to be resubmitted. A lot of these we reduced the footprint in a lot of areas, and there is the overpass that we'll be submitting on patent as part of that for review as well. And all that is in conjunction with the federal highway. As part of the changes from the initial 30% plans on this project, there are some areas that the communities asked to give some input on. One of those was the aesthetics, especially around the patent overpass and some of the areas where we're going to have some larger right-of-way to do some things with. In coordination with the City of Asheville, an aesthetics advisory committee was created. Most of that was made up with the previous committee that provided the input on the project, which made it much easier for them to get in and go quickly. They had several meetings. We were able to bring the design build team in on that as well to be able to evaluate as we went. So all these were parallel paths of as we developed ideas, developed costs, developed what the plans would be for those. These meetings were all open to the public and with opportunities for public comment. You see here some of the aesthetic enhancements that the NCDOT has agreed to fund. And we were able to provide $1,159,000 towards these aesthetic enhancements, and we hope we're installing all those in with a supplemental agreement with the design build team.
Chris, on your previous slide, you noted the environmental document. Can you just talk briefly about kind of the piece on WLOS that referred to it as NCDOT is reopening the environmental document on I-2513 and how usual or unusual what actually is happening is?
Yeah, it's not a reopening of the document. This is the normal process for a design build that we go through. The environmental impact statement is created based on, again, that kind of 30% plans we have to initially allow teams to bid on for us to have that selection. We know there are going to be changes to that. That's the whole part of design build, is allow that innovation of the designers to submit what they can do to help innovate, to help with both costs and for the purpose and need of the project. As part of that, once that's selected, all it has to be reevaluated. It's not an opening up of the document again. It's just basically reevaluating those changes to make sure they do meet the purpose and need. That's something that, like I said, with design build is very normal. You don't see it with the bid build because all the design's final when it's put out for bids. So there's not any changes by a design team at that point. But this is something that we go through on all of our design build projects for the when we federally funded. And back to the Aesthetics Advisory Committee, the previous screen I showed you there was what DOT was going to be able to provide some funding towards. On this screen, through the optimization, we were able to reduce the footprint in several areas and reduce some of the some structures and some different things under the design that would have had aesthetics applied that the city of Asheville had already committed funds for. By doing that, we freed up about $350,000 that they had already allocated, and they've committed to using them to do some enhancement in some of the other areas on the project, and you see those listed there. The results of these meetings were presented by the AAC to the City Council, and all that was explained to them, which staff have been a part of that, and some of the council members have been a part of these meetings throughout. And again, just like the ones that the DOT will be funding, these are going to be incorporated with the design build team through a subcommittee. As well as having citizens reach out about the aesthetics, we had some reach out about providing some of their thoughts on the design with the changes we had. We had some stakeholders that got together and they had a charrette of, they threw out some ideas and worked together and worked through some initial thoughts and concepts, and then brought it to the NCDOT design build team, where that was worked through. They had a lot of different ideas. There were several meetings we had through the coordination with the city of Asheville. The three main ones out of that were the Hillcrest Bridge and Hill Street Roundabout, the Patton Avenue Overpass, and Haywood Road Interchange. First of those is the Hillcrest Bridge and Hill Street Roundabout. As part of O&R, the location of the bridge that crosses from the new roadway that's going to be a frontage road for the Hillcrest Apartments was moved north to come to basically intersect directly with the driveway for the Hillcrest Apartments. The previous design in the 2018 preliminary plans had it much further south. By doing this, there was a pedestrian bridge in the location where the new bridge is proposed. By doing this, we're able to put the multimodal facilities on that one bridge and reduce the cost of having two bridges in this project and give a more direct entrance to the Hill Street community. So with that one, they had three different alternatives they were looking through. One of them was to replace the roundabout on the Hill Street side with a four-way stop. The other was shifting the entire structure south to realign directly with the intersection of the Isaac Dixon School Road. And then the last was modifying the roundabout in existing location to reduce its footprint slightly to not impact some of the parcels in that area. Working through those, working through the advantages and disadvantages on each, the committee ended up going with the modified roundabout. That one preserved the connections as well as kept the safety and did not disrupt the school traffic and reduce some of the impacts to the private property that were a concern. The next was the Patton Avenue Overpass. The team brought a very interesting idea of realigning Patton to try to take it over top of I-26. that was worked through was given to the design build team, who ran it through all their programs to do the design, do a rough preliminary design to see what we would be looking at. Had a lot of good with it, including help with some of the constructability issues that we're looking at with the Patton Avenue, maintaining traffic, as well as the utility conflicts in that location. But once it was ran through, it turned out there were several problems that popped up. One being the larger amount of right-of-way it's going to require. So there are more properties going to have to be purchased, including 2 homes and 2 more families being relocated. Also ended up having a very steep grade in order for Patton to get across I-26. The grade was deemed to not be very pedestrian and bike friendly by our bike stakeholders that were part of this group. And they did not feel that that would work well of making it a bike friendly route for people to try to get from the Patton Avenue area to downtown. It also increased the greater overall bridge area, leading to much higher costs for this option. After all that was weighed, the committee decided this was not a preferred alternative and decided to remove that from consideration. Next was the Haywood Road interchange. There were several components in there. One of the big ones was Burton Street intersection. It is going to be a right-in, right-out only. And they were wondering if there's any way to make that a left-in, left-out. The issue with that is it's close proximity to the interchange. It just becomes a safety issue of traffic backing up, traffic actually getting through. There are other ways out from there that does have full access, and so with that one, the committee decided to drop that for consideration. Hanover Street is another one, which is just south of 240. With the current design, it would lose any connectivity to Haywood Road, and it was requested we look at that. Right here, that section is actually partially in the BD project and partially in the AC project. So with that, DOT is committed to explore and see what we can do to try to keep some type of a connectivity, not be, potentially right in, right out, or something else, but we are reviewing that with our design build team and working with our current design on the AC section to see if there's something we can do to provide some kind of limited connectivity. The other concern they had was the length of the new bridge over I-26. Kind of hard to tell in the small picture, but you can see just on the south side, there's kind of a large gore area that doesn't show any lanes. They wanted to know if we couldn't shorten the bridge up there to allow the better connectivity. All of that has to be that width due to the maintenance of traffic as we construct the roadway. We took all this back through our traffic analysts. They ran through the models, and if we tried to shorten the bridge any, it would cause severe backups and also severe issues with emergency response. A lot of the people from EOC expressed concerns about that, and have concerns of anything hindering ambulances, as this is a main thoroughfare to the hospital and for the fire department to get to various areas in the city. So on that one, the team decided to go ahead and remove that from consideration as well. Another big concern that came up was what to do with some of the right-of-way that would be opened up once we finish the project, especially on the east side of the river. We're going to be changing some of the configuration of the interstate and removing some roadway that's currently there, and through the O&R process, there was actually a partial interchange that was removed, which is going to leave a large area of property. Working with the group, we are talking about various ways to be able to dispose of that, which there are laws that govern how right-of-way can be disposed of that we'll have to work through. That is something that we are working with the city of Asheville to try to get that worked out, to get those areas turned back over so that it can be utilized for better uses than just kind of gore areas between the interstate and some of our roadways. But we are working through that, and that will be something that we'll be working with the city, and they most likely have a coordination group working through that with us through the life of this project. And so, if you have any questions, I have Nathan's name and number on there. He would be happy to. No, I'll be happy to answer as well. He's got more been in the depths of this from the initial start.
Thanks, Chris. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, all right. We will move on then to regular updates. Division 13.
All right, Chris has provided a thorough update of 2513, so we won't address any of that. But for the 4700 project on 26, currently the Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge is in a one-lane configuration with a signal. That should be complete by the end of the month, then placing traffic onto the new bridge. Demo of the old bridge is scheduled to start in 4 to 6 weeks, and they are planning to have all 8 lanes constructed by spring per the resident engineer. On US 19, B4442 over Reams Creek, they are planning to set girders mid-October. We'll be doing this at night to help minimize impacts to traffic. And then lastly, Haywood Road, pedestrian ADA compliance ramps and paving and restriping. The contractor has communicated with the department their plans to commence construction at a date later than first proposed. This will allow them to schedule and execute construction in a more continuous way that should decrease the time frame that motorists and pedestrians will be impacted while still completing the project by the completion date. Okay. And our project development update, quite a lengthy list there, but in the near term, several highway safety projects, including long life pavement markings, rumble strips, and guardrail updates. Also not shown on there, quite a few bridges are in design, and previously forgot to mention that there's a lot of the Helene Bridge replacements that are in design. Hopefully we'll be seeing construction beginning on several of those later this year.
Thanks very much. Steve.
All right. Construction. So, same projects you've been seeing for a while. That second one there, the bridges over Richland Creek and US 19 and 2274, that's at the Maggie Valley interchange there. If you're traveling eastbound, there is a lane closure. I couldn't get a date for when that's going to be open back up, but be aware that that is neck down to one lane. Not sure in our last meeting if the I-40 bridge over Thickety Road and also the two bridges, one on Sonoma Road, one on Max Thompson Road, if they were on this list or not, but be aware if you're traveling there. I-26 in Henderson County, for the most part, is complete. Traffic is open in all lanes there. Subdivision 13 can get their section open. It'll be good to go. Henderson County, again, it's the same projects that you've been seeing for quite a while that are on here. And a reminder, these updates are on the FBRMPO website, so if you have any questions after you take a look at this list, you can contact us. And kind of the same update for project development. We haven't added any projects in a while, so same projects you've been seeing for quite some time. Bridge projects, the dates on those do tend to keep shifting around to help balance the budget, so just be aware of that. Any questions for Division 14?
Thanks, Steve. With that, we'll kick it to Daniel.
Oh,
reusing 3 updates from last month. Many others have passed, like the North Carolina Transportation Summit was earlier this month, if anybody got to attend that. But just in other news, North Carolina DOT is expanding IMAP coverage on I-26 south of US 25 all the way to the South Carolina state line, so we can have end-to-end patrols to help straight-ahead drivers. North Carolina and Georgia have teamed up to create a new interstate in the sky right over South Carolina, enough said. And then finally, North Carolina by train ridership has increased to a new all-time record in the first half of the year, 355,000 passengers, so on track to exceed 700,000 from last year by about 4%. That's, of course, we started at 500,000 in 2022, so steady increases in ridership.
Thank you very much. And for the last one, pick it up to the MPO staff.
I won't go through all of it. Our subcommittees remain active. I'll note that we are having discussions about the advisory committee, as well as other potential committees at the MPO. Legislatively, no major updates. There was a request for information from the House of Representatives on the new surface transportation bill that's being drafted. The MPO did submit comments in line mostly with the Association of MPOs, as well as noting some of the unique challenges in our region. Also, on the federal side, I'll note there is one NOFO that's out there, the Innovative Finance and Asset Concession Grant that offers $45 million for public entities to assess existing assets for value and explore innovative financing, alternative delivery, and public-private partnership options. It's the worst acronym I've ever seen. That, and we do anticipate the Bridge Investment Program, or the BIT, to come out soon, as well as the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation, also known as the SMART grants, to be available this fall. So more on that in the near future. Also, the Bike Walk and See conference was held earlier this week in Hickory. Tim Anderson gave a presentation on lean recovery. I was there for a little bit. Sandy and Ada also represented on our team. So it was a good overall event. The Association of MPOs conference is coming up next week in Providence, Rhode Island. I'll be presenting on our wildlife crossings plan as part of that. So that is it from the MPO.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Any other news, special updates, etc.? Topics for next meeting? Public comment? Terrific. Thank you all. We're adjourned.
Thanks, folks.